The Gerson treatment. Well, the Gerson treatment was created by a man by the name of Dr. Max Gerson, MD, who is a German medical doctor who came over here during World War II as he was a German Jew, and he had to flee Germany. He lost his entire family in the Holocaust, and he came here and set up practice on Park Avenue in Manhattan. Before he came over here to the United States, he was famous all throughout Europe for having cured tuberculosis. He was a very renowned medical doctor. And when he came over here, he began treating patients with advanced diseases, particularly terminal cancer, and was having great success rates in treating terminal cancer. And while he was treating people for cancer, he started facing very many political consequences in regards to that, as the American Medical Association, the pharmaceutical industry, and even the U.S. government began to censor him and his therapy. I lived with Dr. Gerson's family, and I've had the privilege of being personally trained by Dr. Gerson's family themselves. And recently, a documentary has just been completed on our work.
Wow.
That premiered in New York and Los Angeles and was just released on Netflix. And it chronicles my patient that I cured of terminal ovarian cancer. The movie is called The Beautiful Truth, and it's a sequel to the original movie, which is called The Gerson Miracle. The Gerson Miracle won Best Film at the 2004 Beverly Hills Film Festival against 2,000 different films. And so more and more the Gerson therapy is becoming widely known. And in alternative circles, it's certainly considered the pinnacle of healthcare in the natural therapy realm.
Right. Why do you think that the FDA won't approve this type of treatment?
Well, the crux of the matter is it's pretty simple. Cancer, it's a $200 billion per year industry. That's cancer alone. You take all the other diseases and you compile them together, and all the individual drug treatments that they've created for that, you're now looking at a $1 trillion per year industry. That's about 18% of the American GDP. And it's been said that roughly 15 to 20% of the American workforce is employed by the medical or pharmaceutical industry. They say more people actually suffer, more people work in the cancer industry than actually suffer with the disease. And so, plain and simple, it doesn't pay to cure cancer. The pharmaceutical industry is making so much money, and they have control of so many different aspects of our society, from our media, from our university systems, and they even control the FDA, which we can talk about later. But plain and simple, it doesn't pay to cure cancer. And they will fervently try to suppress and censor anything that's showing any success in the realm of treating advanced degenerative diseases. They're closing clinics left and right in the United States that are treating diseases naturally. They've actually instituted laws that make it illegal to treat any advanced disease.
Illegal?
It is illegal in the United States to treat any advanced disease using nutrition, and particularly the Gerson therapy. That is why a majority of alternative practitioners that want to treat people naturally, they're forced to leave the country, particularly Mexico is where they go, in order to treat people using their natural therapies. And so that's why our clinics are located in Mexico.
Right, right. So we can't have any of these clinics in the U.S.?
Absolutely not. There's one classic example, and a recent example is a doctor by the name of Dr. Brzezinski in Texas. Dr. Brzezinski has had some success treating various brain cancers and doing it naturally. Well, the FDA, within the last several years, invaded his office, took all his records, and shut down his clinic. You may have seen Dr. Brzezinski recently on CNN, on Larry King Live, with Suzanne Summers and Nick Gonzalez. Nick Gonzalez was actually mentored by a doctor by the name of Dr. Kelly, who we cured of terminal pancreatic cancer. And so all three of those sat on the Larry King Live panel talking about alternative therapy. But it was Dr. Brzezinski who recently, his clinic was shut down in Texas. And he's had relative success treating brain tumors, and as we have as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, what are the effects of chemotherapy and radiation to the body?
Well, we know that chemotherapy is obviously very toxic.
Very.
When people take chemotherapy, they obviously have the symptoms of nausea, throwing up, they lose their hair. Other effects that we don't often hear about is they lose reproductive capacity. But in terms of what is it doing, it's over-toxifying the liver, obviously. I don't know if people know this, but the chemical base of chemotherapy is mustard gas.
Mustard gas.
Mustard gas is the chemical base used in a majority of chemotherapies. We know that mustard gas is used in biological warfare.
Wow.
Yes.
Dr. Vickers, I had no idea.
Yeah. Today.
Chemical warfare.
Yes. Do you know that they've never double-blinded studied chemotherapy? No. Chemotherapy has never been double-blinded studied. Do you know why?
Why? Because
evidence suggests that patients that do not receive chemotherapy live 3 to 4 times longer than those that do.
I have heard that.
Yeah, and so if they double-blind study chemotherapy, that means that the control group would get the placebo, a sugar pill, and they would ultimately end up living 3 to 4 times longer based on current evidence. So they've never double-blinded chemotherapy, yet they continue to give it to millions of Americans who are suffering from advanced and or terminal cancer.
Because of greed.
Well, because like I said, cancer is a $200 billion per year industry.
Wow. So they really don't care if there are healthy individuals walking around. I mean, it's hard to believe, it's hard to fathom that when you go to a doctor because you have an illness, that doctor does not have your best interest at heart. Because what I'm hearing is if he did have your best interest at heart, then he would be thinking and telling you about the Gerson treatment or anything when it comes to holistic cleansing or whatever, that he would be doing everything he could as a medical doctor to heal your body. That is why you went to school, I thought. Now, I know they're just practicing medicine. That's what a doctor is. But still, why would I want to go to a medical doctor if he's not going to heal my body, if he's not going to give me all that I need to know to live my life in a pure fashion?
Okay. Well, medical doctors, I believe when they go to school, they are well-intentioned people. Unfortunately, their educations are controlled by the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry donates billions of dollars per year, gives billions of dollars per year to the university systems. For what reason? To research their drugs. So when a medical doctor goes to school, he or she gets less than 10 hours of nutrition in their entire education. And it's ironic because when they graduate, they have to take the Hippocratic Oath from Hippocrates, who's considered the greatest physician that's ever lived. Well, anybody who knows anything about Hippocrates, one of his most famous quotes is, "Let food be your medicine." So why is it that they're taking the Hippocratic Oath and they don't do anything in the realm of nutrition and treating disease? Well, the reason why is because at a certain point in their education, they are led down the path of treating people with pharmaceutical drugs and surgeries or radiation. They learn for the first 2 years, they have identical educations as we do in chiropractic school. But it's at those last 2 years where they're led down the road of using pharmaceutical drugs and chemotherapy and radiation. And to me, it's one of the greatest tragedies because they take well-intentioned people and they lead them down a path that cannot produce overall healing. Stacy, one of the major epidemics in society today is diabetes.
Right.
There's two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is where the pancreas has lost its ability to produce insulin. That often occurs at a very early age. And that's usually related to milk drinking and vaccinations.
Really?
Milk, yes, absolutely. Milk drinking at a very early age destroys and exhausts the pancreas and can lead to juvenile diabetes. And vaccinations are also strongly connected with juvenile diabetes because the mercury affects the central nervous system and specifically attacks and destroys the insulin cells, the beta cells of the pancreas. We know that. But there's a greater epidemic in type 2 diabetes. And in type 2 diabetes, the cause, plain and simple, is it's dietary. In previous discussions, I mentioned Dr. Albert Schweitzer, who called Dr. Gerson the most eminent genius in medical history. 8 years before Dr. Schweitzer won the Nobel Peace Prize, Dr. Gerson cured him of severely advanced type 2 diabetes in 6 weeks. He had severely advanced diabetes at the age of 75. And Dr. Gerson cured him of that severely advanced diabetes in 6 weeks. What's the problem in type 2 diabetes? In type 2 diabetes, the pancreas is actually producing insulin. The pancreas has not lost the ability to produce insulin. So why isn't that insulin making it into the cell, to the cell's receptor sites for insulin? Here's why. Insulin receptor sites are being blocked by cholesterol. And on the Gerson therapy is so highly effective in removing cholesterol from the body that diabetics, usually within 6 to 8 weeks, no longer have their need for insulin. Not to mention a lot of the secondary effects of their diabetes, their high blood pressure, their circulatory problems in their legs, right? All those things disappear. And it's simple. It is so simple. By simply removing cholesterol from the insulin receptor sites, the body's production of insulin can do the job without the use of injectable or pill forms of insulin.
Okay, I want to ask you this. I know someone that the doctor said you only have 3 to 5 years to live because your diabetes is so bad.
That's crazy.
And let's say they're in their 60s.
That's absolutely crazy. I just told you. Albert Schweitzer, at the age of 75, had severely advanced diabetes. I guarantee you that same doctor would have told that same thing to Albert Schweitzer. In 6 weeks, he was cured. 6 weeks. 3 to 5 years to live, that's a lifetime for us. And I'm not kidding you. That person, within 6 to 8 weeks, would more than likely be off of all their insulin.
Wow.
Now, perhaps in that person, the rebuilding process after that might take a bit longer, but within 6 to 12 months, their body is restored.
So how do you think that person feels now? You know, because they've had diabetes for years and years, and they have not probably followed some of the rules that they should have.
That's why they have diabetes.
To have a death sentence put on you.
Right. We classically see that. We classically see that if a doctor tells a cancer patient, you have 1 year to live, or you have 6 months to live, they will literally program that in their mind. And they will sometimes die to the day of that 6 month or one year death sentence.
Dendritic cells, probably one of the more important things that we do, and what dendritic cells are is they're like the generals in your body. They literally go through your body seeking out threats to the system. And the way they're able to do that is viruses, bacteria, cancer, they produce chemicals, antigens. And these dendritic cells are able to pick up and detect these antigens, and they take that message and they go back and they present it to the immune system cells, to your white blood cells, your natural killer cells, all the cells that that are responsible for going and attacking and destroying these entities, the viruses, the bacteria, the cancer. So dendritic cell therapy is something that we offer at our clinic. It's one of the more pricier therapies, but it's incredibly powerful. And what we do is we draw the patient's blood, and then their blood goes through UV light photophoresis, the UV radiation, to kill off any pathogens and stuff. And then the dendritic cells are cultured. They're multiplied. So let's say when we draw your blood, in that sample there's 10 million dendritic cells. Well, over the 4 to 5 day period that you that those cells are being cultured, at the end of those 5 days you might have 100 million dendritic cells, and then they're reintroduced into your body as an IV. So those dendritic cells, when they're reintroduced, they're going to be able to pick up those antigens in the cancer or virus or bacterial, whatever you're coming to us with, and the ability to rally the immune response is exponentially greater than it normally would be. And so the whole foundations of all these immunotherapies that we're doing is ultimately to get the dendritic cells to recognize the cancer so that it can present it to the immune system, and the immune system can begin to attack the disease. And so the diet, the Gerson diet, what that's doing is it's rebuilding the immune system. It's rebuilding, the white blood cell capability, ultimately, your neutrophils, your lymphocytes, your natural killer cells. That's ultimately what the incredible amounts of food and juicing that our patients are getting, it's rebuilding that immune system. So if we can enhance that using the dendritic cells and the other therapies that you mentioned, the incredible effect you can have on these diseases is exponentially greater than just the basic Gerson therapy itself. Somebody once wrote a book that sharks don't get cancer. That was the name of the book. And why is that? Well, shark cartilage, when it's given in a human body, it is an anti-angiogenesis agent. What does that mean? One of the reasons why tumors grow so quickly and rapidly and out of control is because they create their own blood supply. And that blood supply is constantly feeding them. Well, what shark cartilage does, it prevents the ability of the cancer to adapt that blood supply, to create that blood supply. So if we can give shark cartilage in conjunction with the therapy, we can slow the growth of the cancer so that we can give the time and opportunity of the immune system to get the upper hand. So that's what shark cartilage does. It prevents the tumor from creating its own vascular blood supply so that it can't grow. Coley simply is the greatest addition to the Gerson therapy since Dr. Gerson's death. In his book that he wrote in 1958, before he died, 1 year before he died, he wrote and specifically mentions William B. Coley. What people need to understand is that Gerson was the consummate scientist. He was constantly trying to perfect his therapy. In fact, if you look at his therapy up until 1952, it's completely different than it is now, and from 1952 to 1959 when he died. He was constantly searching the literature to see things that could benefit and enhance his results. And right around the time of his death when he wrote this, he was talking about immunotherapies. And if he was alive today, I have no doubt he would be all over dendritic cell therapy, autologous vaccines, which we're going to talk about, the Coley's therapy, all these things, no doubt he would have been doing. And he specifically mentions on page 128 of his book, William B. Coley. And this, like I said, has been the greatest addition to the therapy since his death. What is the Coley therapy? Well, Coley was a medical doctor. I believe he was an oncologist, and I think he was from Harvard. Well, he noticed that when his patients came down with staph or strep infections, that their cancers got better or they went away. But then they would come back. And so he started to culture the bacteria, the toxins that staph and strep bacteria make. They produce their own toxins, bacterial and viral endotoxins. They make their own toxins through their own metabolism. So he began to culture these toxins, and he began to inject those toxins into the subcutaneous tissue of his patients, and he got the same exact response. Tumors would diminish or they'd go away completely. But usually they would come back, and so he would continually inject them, and he would at times get the upper hand on the disease and achieve permanent cure. But very rarely was he able to achieve permanent cure. He was able to, but not with the consistency, that something like the Gerson therapy has. So Gerson theorized that if you put people on the Coley's therapy while on the Gerson therapy, you could get exponentially greater results. And that was the one thing that Coley failed to see, was that he wasn't addressing the underlying issues of a depleted immune system. He wasn't addressing the fact that these cancer patients, their bodies were so depleted with nutrients that they couldn't rally a permanent immunological response. So Gerson knew that if you could rebuild and completely restore the immune system and then give them Coley's, you could achieve some incredible results. And that's exactly what's happening. When we give somebody an injection of Coley's, their immune system responds incredibly. They spark a fever, 102, 103, 104, 105 degrees. And why is that significant? Because the way the body destroys anything, a virus, a bacteria, cancer, is through a fever response, through an inflammatory response. When you break your leg, when you break your arm, what does the body do? It becomes inflamed, right? It swells up, it gets hot, red, inflamed. Why? Well, because right at that time, the body is rallying in defense, and it's going and destroying everything it needs to destroy. So, and then to rebuild. So it's creating inflammatory products. Well, that's how the body kills cancer. That's how it kills viruses, bacteria. When you have an infection, what does it do? It creates a fever. So when we give Coley's, what you see is absolutely phenomenal. Right about the first hour or two, the patient might spark a small fever. But right around the time they go to bed and their body relaxes for the day, they spark an enormous fever that can last for 4, 5, 6 hours. And what's incredible is, let's say you have a pancreatic tumor, or you have a colon tumor, or you have a breast tumor. You'll hear the patient say, "It hurts right where my tumors are." Why is that? Because when you stimulate the immune system that strongly and you put it on high alert, it immediately is going to go and destroy what's most vital to its survival. And obviously in this case, it's the cancer. So when we give that Coley's, those tumors are attacked immediately. And it's just incredible to see the body go to work and literally go straight to where the tumors are. So that has been the greatest addition to the Gerson therapy. And just as Gerson theorized on page 128 of his book, A Cancer Therapy, Results of 50 Cases, just as he theorized that he could get greater responses by using Coley's with Gerson, he was exactly right. He never got the chance to do it because he died. And we're doing it. And we're the only ones doing it. To this day, Charlotte Gerson, Dr. Gerson's own daughter, for whatever reason, she's refused to do any of these advanced protocols. We simply don't understand it, because in her father's book, he clearly talks about these things. So that's the Coley therapy. So we use Laetrile. You could probably elaborate more about Laetrile, but essentially what it is, it's from apricot kernels. It's vitamin B17, and it causes the apoptosis of cancer cells. It destroys cancer cells. And it's particularly useful in bone cancers, not only for bone cancers, but it's particularly useful in bone cancers. And when it's done in conjunction with hyperthermia, its effects have been said to increase anywhere from 7 to 10-fold. Now you have people out there eating apricot kernels, okay, all day long, or they're taking apricot kernel capsules in 500 milligram tablets usually. That may provide some benefit, but really to get therapeutic concentrations of Laetrile into the body to be used by the body, it really needs to be done IV. And our patients are getting 6 to 9 grams, okay, 6 to 9 grams of IV Laetrile daily. High dose vitamin C IVs, that goes from the research of Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling's the only two-time unshared Nobel Prize winner. He won it once in medicine and once in chemistry. And one of those, I believe, was on vitamin C. And, you know, we know the history of that, its ability to fight viruses, bacteria, and certainly it plays a role in a cancer therapy protocol. Now, you know, it's really important to understand, we say this constantly, people will come down here just for Laetrile therapy, not to us, but to people offering Laetrile therapy or vitamin C therapy. These therapies in and of themselves, they simply do not and will not reverse advanced cancer. What reverses advanced cancer is a conglomeration of all these things together, with the foundations being a strict diet of organic fruits and vegetables in the massive amounts that we're giving on the Gerson therapy. That has to be the foundation. The detoxification has to be the foundation. It's only in that scenario can you start to use these other therapies, and they have incredible effects on the body, but only when done in conjunction with the Gerson therapy and, you know, a very strict detoxification protocol. When people call us, one of the first things I say to them is, are you really willing to change? Are you really willing to buckle down? Because, you know, I'll get people calling me and they say, well, we see that the Gerson therapy, it's the most effective therapy that there is. They've come to that conclusion. But then they'll say, but we also recognize it's the hardest to do. And I'm like, well, that's why it's so effective. Because look, if you want to get well, you're going to have to want it. And you're going to have to be disciplined, buckle down, and do what needs to be done. And yeah, all these other therapies are nice and easy because you stick out your arm, some stuff's injected into you, and it, you know, you don't have to do anything. But that's why they don't ultimately heal in and of themselves. It truly is the lifestyle change, the other things that you mentioned, the stress, the forgiveness, those things that are the foundations of healing. And then these other therapies are so powerful when you add them, particularly dendritic, choline, and the one other thing we haven't spoken about, the autologous therapy. So what is the autologous therapy? Well, again, we draw the patient's blood. And in that blood is what? Cancer cells. Well, cancer cells, they have an ability to hide themselves from the immune system. They create a protein biofilm around their membranes that make it really hard for dendritic cells, which we spoke about earlier, to recognize them. So that the dendritic cells can't recognize them, and the dendritic cells can't present that threat to the immune system so that the immune system can attack it. Well, when we draw the blood, those cancer cells are cultured. And that protein biofilm molecule around the membrane is modified, it's sensitized, and it's reintroduced to the body. So that modification and that sensitization that happens with that cancer cell, the dendritic cells are now able to recognize it. And when they're able to recognize what we re-inject into the body, they also become able to start recognizing the ones that we weren't able to draw out of the body. So that modification, that sensitization of the cancer cell helps the dendritic cells to begin recognizing the cancer. So our patients, when they come to our clinic, they go home with 3 months. It's a 13 injection process, once a week. They go home once a week, inject themselves with the autologous treatment, and they get 3 months worth of choline to go home with as well. Now they do dendritics while they're here. that's something that's done here. It's reintroduced to them as an IV. But the autologous and the choles, they go home with. So when you do choles, when you do dendritic cell, when you do autologous, those three things together just absolutely destroy the cancer. And where choles is really effective is when we can get straight to the tumor, like a breast tumor. You know, on the basic Gerson therapy, breast cancer is not getting the results that it used to get. Over the last 10, 20 years, the results have decreased on a percentage basis. I'd say a good 10 to 15%. So let's say in the past we were able to get a 40 to 45% cure rate in advanced breast cancer. Now we're probably getting 30 on the basic therapy. I think that might be because of all the increased estrogens that have been belched into our environment over the last 20 years in the myriad of forms that they come in. Nevertheless, with the addition of choles, the results of breast cancer are so much better, because if we can get to that tumor, inject choles straight into that tumor, the reaction of the breast, it's remarkable. It is a sight to see. When we inject it into it, not just a breast tumor, but any tumor that we can have access to through palpation, being able to touch it. If we can inject it right into that tumor, within an hour, the tumor immediately begins to get hot and red, because the immune system is going straight to the area to react to the choles. And then for about a day or two, the breast gets hot and swollen and itchy, painful. But you know what? It's proof that it's working. And then after around the third or fourth day, a lot of times you'll literally see where the tumor is. It'll open up and it'll start draining out pus. And what's pus? Pus is a sign that the immune system has killed whatever it's killed, and it's the body getting rid of it. Now, another thing we're doing is we're also doing intratumoral urea. Intratumoral urea, we can also inject urea directly into tumors that we can access directly. Urea has the capacity to go in and start literally breaking up diseased tissue. We inject the urea in there and it breaks up diseased tissue. And then once that diseased tissue is broken up and broken down, then the immune system will come and start to clean it up. So that's another thing we do in tumors that we have direct access to, is choles and urea therapy. Two very powerful therapies, particularly in things like breast cancer. We're loaded with heavy metals. Heavy metals are everywhere. Mercury is in our oceans. It's on our pesticides. Pesticides are usually mercury-based pesticides. Cadmium is in car exhaust. So when we're driving, we're breathing in cadmium, which depletes the body of zinc. And we know zinc is a major immunosystem mineral. So we're loaded with heavy metals today. Heavy metals, the way they act is they inhibit enzymes from working in your body. Your body is one big enzymatic machine. I think they say that over 300 or 400 different enzymatic reactions occur daily in your body, different reactions for different things. Well, all those things require vitamins and minerals and different things that you need in your daily diet. Well, heavy metals inhibit your enzyme systems. Mercury, for example, inhibits enzyme systems that are directly related to selenium. Okay? So that's the reason why you have to chelation therapy to get these heavy metals out of the body. So our patients, when they come to the clinic 2 to 3 times a week, they're receiving chelation therapy to get these heavy metals out of the body so that these enzymatic systems that we're trying to stimulate can function properly. And this this was the next point I was going to bring up. What's the difference between our clinic and all the other clinics? Now it's coming out that clearly stainless steel is leaching heavy metals. We have a $6,000 set of titanium cookware that has been proven not to leach heavy metals into our food. And not only that, the system with which that cookware cooks, 90% of the nutrition is preserved when you cook it. It's a vacuum sealed system that preserves all the nutrients. Steam does not escape. You know, when you cook in your home smells like the food that you're cooking because it's releasing the steam being cooked with that it's creating. And what you're really smelling is the nutrition that you're losing. With this cookware, it's called Salad Master cookware that we're using. With this cookware, there is no smell of what you're cooking because it's vacuum sealed and everything is kept inside the pot until it's finished. And the colors of the fruits and vegetables that we're cooking with, the flavor is absolutely incredible, and the heavy metals are not there. And not only are you getting greater nutrition, the flavor's better because you have better nutrition, and we do that because it's so essential for our patients to have that extra nutrition and to not have that contamination with those heavy metals.